This series is brought to you by Excel Blitz. It will cover Microsoft Excel 2013 Advanced Edition, and I'm your instructor Adnan Ejaz. In this tutorial we'll learn how to use conditional sum, average and count functions. In previous tutorials we've learned how to use basic mathematical functions such as sum, average and count functions. Now what if we wanted to calculate the sum, average or count of only those cells in a given cell range that meet certain criteria that we specify? For this purpose, Excel gives us the conditional functions. Now as you can see, I have lumped sum and average conditional functions together, whereas have separated the count conditional functions. Essentially, while both are the same, but there is only a very minor difference between their syntax that I am going to highlight shortly. Let's have a look at the sum and average conditional functions first. Now if we want to base our calculation only on a single criterion, we use the SumIf and AverageIf singular forms, that is without the succeeding s. As you can see, there are three arguments to both of these functions. The first argument is the range. This is usually the range that we want to base our criteria on, followed by the actual criteria or condition that needs to be true for these functions to operate. And then the third argument is an optional argument signified by square brackets around it. This argument is there so that if the range housing our criteria and the range we want to calculate the sum of actually are different, if they are the same, we can ignore this argument. Now if there are multiple criteria that need to be met for the calculation to be performed, we use the sum and average plural counterparts. They are the ones having a succeeding s, which signifies their plural form just like in the English language. Now the difference here to note is that the sum range is the first argument in their plural counterparts. That is to say that in the singular counterparts, the sum range is the third argument, which is also optional, while in the plural counterparts, the sum range is the first argument, which is not optional. It has to be given, followed by the range housing our first criteria, followed by the actual criteria or condition, followed by the second range housing our criteria and the second criteria or condition, and so on and so forth. Now let's have a look at the count conditional functions. They are essentially similar, however with one minor difference, that the criteria and the count ranges actually have to be identical. That is, we cannot base a criteria on a different range and not include it in the count calculation. With only this minor difference, you can see that the rest of the syntax is identical. Let's see these conditional functions in action now. But first, let me remove the clutter from here. We're going to hide these unwanted function calculations, which we can unhide afterwards. Now let's say we wanted to calculate the total number of subjects each student actually passed, and let's say the passing threshold was greater than 33. Since we are basing our calculations on only one criterion, we need to use the CountIf function. We write CountIf, the cell range B2 to I2, followed by the condition, which in our case is greater than 33. Now you can see that the count function calculated 4 for Jim, since Jim failed in 3 subjects and did not appear in 1. Now let's say if we wanted to find out how many students attained an average greater than 60 marks and also appeared in all 8 subjects. To do this, since we are basing our calculation on more than one criterion, therefore we need to use the plural CountIfs function. We write CountIfs followed by the cell range, which for us is L2. The condition we need to check is greater than 60, followed by the second cell range, which for us is K2. The condition in this case is we want to see if the student appeared in all 8 subjects. So the cell should have 8. Flash filling for all the remaining students. You can see that only those students who get a 1 in this column attained an average greater than 60 marks and appeared in all 8 subjects. Similarly, if we wanted to find out marks summed and averaged for all students in each subject, if that student has passed that particular subject, since there is only one criteria we need to check, we can use the SumIf function. We need to enter the range. Since the criterion range and the sum range are the same for us, we are going to use one range, B2 to B13, followed by the condition, which in this case is greater than 33. You can see for subject 1 that Sally's marks were not counted. Similarly, we can calculate the average function also on the same lines. We write average if B2 to B13, and the condition is greater than 33. To find out marks summed and averaged for all students in each subject, if that student has passed that subject and only if they appeared in all subjects. Since there are 2 criteria, we need to use the multiple conditional functions. We write SumIfs followed by the sum range, which in our case is B2 to B13, followed by the first criteria range, which is also the same, B2 to B13, followed by the condition we need to check, and that is greater than 33, followed by the second criteria range, which we want to check for all subjects, and that is K2 to K13. The condition is 8. We can use a similar formula for average ifs also. Just substitute SumIfs with average ifs. Thanks for watching.